Hey there, I'm Maria. 6 months ago, I couldn't even open a jar of pickles. My hands would swell up like balloons and getting out of bed. That took about 15 minutes of wincing and careful movements. The arthritis in my joints had gotten so bad that my grandkids stopped asking me to play with them. They knew Grandma couldn't keep up anymore. But today, I just finished a 2-mile walk along the beach. Yesterday, I spent the afternoon gardening. And last weekend, I was on the floor building block towers with my 5-year-old grandson. What changed? It wasn't some miracle drug or expensive treatment. It was my grandmother's Mediterranean diet wisdom that I'd ignored for decades, until pain forced me to reconsider everything. I remember sitting in the doctor's office last year, hearing those words, advanced osteoarthritis. He showed me the x-rays of my hands and knees, pointing out how the cartilage had worn away, leaving bone grinding against bone. This is why you're in constant pain, he said. We can try medication to manage it, but there's no reversing the damage. I nodded along, already mentally calculating how many pills I'd have to take each day and for how long. Forever, probably. As a 67-year-old woman who always prided herself on staying active, this felt like a death sentence for the lifestyle I loved. The anti-inflammatories helped a bit, but the side effects were almost as bad as the arthritis. My stomach was constantly upset, and I felt foggy all the time. I couldn't drive safely on those medications, which meant even more independence lost. That's when my daughter Elena called. She'd been researching arthritis relief options online and kept seeing studies about the connection between inflammation and diet. Mom, she said, remember how Yaya barely took a pill her entire life? And she gardened until she was 92. Maybe there's something to that old-world Mediterranean diet she always pushed on us. I almost brushed it off. I mean, could olive oil and fish really do what prescription medications couldn't? But when you're in enough pain, you'll try anything. And something about reconnecting with my grandmother's wisdom felt right. My grandmother Eleni came to America from a small village in Greece when she was just 18. She brought very little with her, some clothes, family photos, and her recipes. Those recipes weren't written down. They lived in her hands and heart. I spent countless childhood afternoons in her kitchen, watching her pour olive oil with abandon, crush garlic with the side of a knife, and toss herbs into pots without measuring. Food is medicine, she would say in her thick accent. Americans take pills. Greeks take olive oil. I'd roll my eyes back then. What did an old woman from a tiny village know about modern medicine? As it turns out, quite a lot. I dug through old recipe boxes and called my cousins. I spoke with my aunt in Athens, who still lives the traditional way. I wanted to understand not just what my grandmother ate, but why she ate it. What was the wisdom behind these Mediterranean diet traditions that kept her so healthy into her 90s? What I discovered wasn't just a diet. It was a lifestyle, one that naturally fights inflammation at every meal. Now, I'm no doctor or nutritionist. I'm just a grandmother who was desperate to play with her grandkids again, without wincing in pain. But as I researched, I discovered there's solid science behind what my grandmother instinctively knew. The Mediterranean diet is rich in foods that naturally combat inflammation. Olive oil contains olecanthal, which works similarly to ibuprofen but without the side effects. Fatty fish like sardines and mackerel are packed with omega-3 fatty acids that help reduce joint pain and stiffness. Colorful vegetables and fruits are loaded with antioxidants that fight the free radicals that damage our cells and accelerate aging. One study published in the Arthritis Foundation Journal followed patients with rheumatoid arthritis who adopted a Mediterranean diet. After just 3 months, they reported a 56% decrease in joint pain and a significant improvement in morning stiffness. Another research paper I found looked at the effects of extra virgin olive oil specifically. Participants who consumed about 3 tablespoons daily showed marked improvement in inflammatory markers in their blood after just 6 weeks. I'm not saying the Mediterranean diet is some miracle cure. Arthritis is complex, and what works for one person might not work for another. But the evidence was compelling enough for me to give it a serious try. And what did I have to lose, except maybe some pain? I decided to commit fully for 6 months. No cheating, no just this once fast food stops. I would eat as my grandmother did, focusing on extra virgin olive oil as my primary fatty fish at least twice a week, abundant vegetables and fruits, especially leafy greens, beans, and legumes. Regularly whole grains instead of refined carbs, nuts and seeds daily, limited dairy, mostly sheep and goat cheese, very little red meat, and when I did have it, only small portions, almost no processed foods or added sugars the first week was. Well, challenging is putting it mildly. My body was so used to processed foods that I had headaches and cravings. I missed my morning muffin and afternoon cookie. My taste buds seemed dull to the natural flavors of whole foods. But by week 2, something shifted. I started waking up with slightly less stiffness in my fingers. It was subtle, maybe just 5 minutes less of that morning pain ritual instead of 15. But it was something. By the end of the first month, I noticed I could button my cardigan without asking for help. Small victories, but they kept me going. The second month brought more changes. My energy levels increased, which made sense as I was fueling my body with nutrient-dense foods rather than empty calories. I started sleeping better too, which research shows is crucial for managing arthritis pain. But the real breakthrough came in month 3. I was chopping vegetables for a Greek salad, tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, and onions, when I realized I'd been standing in the kitchen for 30 minutes without my knees screaming at me. I actually had to sit down and cry happy tears. Let me share the specific foods that became my medicine. These aren't exotic ingredients you need to order online. They're simple, whole foods available at any grocery store. First and foremost, olive oil. Not just any olive oil, but extra virgin olive oil, the first cold press that contains all those powerful anti-inflammatory compounds. I use it everywhere, for cooking, drizzling on vegetables, even a tablespoon straight up in the morning. Then there's fatty fish, sardines, anchovies, mackerel, and salmon. These are packed with omega-3 fatty acids that directly fight inflammation. I aim for at least 3 servings a week, usually simple preparations like grilled with lemon and herbs. Nuts became my go-to snack, particularly walnuts, which have the highest omega-3 content of any nut. A small handful mid-afternoon keeps hunger at bay and delivers a powerful dose of anti-inflammatory compounds. Berries deserve special mention. Blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries contain anthocyanins that reduce inflammation and strengthen the immune system. I have them with breakfast almost every day, either fresh or frozen. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, and the wild greens my grandmother called horta provide vitamins and minerals that support joint health. I try to include them in at least 2 meals daily. Garlic and onions might make your breath less than pleasant, but they're incredible for fighting inflammation. These allium vegetables contain sulfur compounds that suppress inflammatory enzymes. I add them to almost everything I cook. Beans and lentils provide plant protein without the inflammatory effects that can come with animal proteins. They're also high in fiber, which helps reduce C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker in the blood. Herbs and spices aren't just flavor enhancers, they're medicinal. Oregano, rosemary, and thyme were staples in my grandmother's kitchen, and now they're in mine. Turmeric with black pepper has become my secret weapon. I add it to soups, stews, and even scrambled eggs for its powerful anti-inflammatory effects. Just as important as what I added was what I eliminated. Some foods are known to trigger inflammation, and I had to be honest with myself about how often they appeared on my plate. Processed foods were the first to go. Anything with a long ingredient list, especially containing words I couldn't pronounce, was out. This eliminated most packaged snacks, frozen meals, and convenience foods. Sugar was next, and this was probably the hardest. I had a serious sweet tooth and thought life without dessert wasn't worth living. But I discovered that after a few weeks without added sugars, fruit began to taste incredibly sweet and satisfying. I drastically reduced my red meat consumption. Instead of having it 3 or 4 times a week, I now have it maybe twice a month, in small portions and only grass-fed. Dairy was tricky because I love cheese. But I switched from cow's milk products to sheep and goat cheeses like feta and halloumi, which tend to be less inflammatory. And I use them as accents rather than main ingredients. Refined carbohydrates like white bread, pasta, and rice were replaced with whole grain versions or alternatives like quinoa and farro. These complex carbs don't cause the same blood sugar spikes that can trigger inflammation. Alcohol was limited to an occasional glass of red wine, which in moderation actually has anti-inflammatory properties thanks to a compound called resveratrol. I also stopped using vegetable and seed oils like corn, soybean, and sunflower oil, which are high in omega-6 fatty acids that can promote inflammation when consumed in excess. Extra virgin olive oil became my only cooking oil. People always ask what I actually eat in a day, so let me walk you through a typical day of Mediterranean eating for senior joint health. Breakfast is usually Greek yogurt with honey, walnuts, and fresh berries. Sometimes I'll have eggs with spinach and tomatoes cooked in olive oil, sprinkled with a bit of feta cheese. I always have a cup of green tea, which has its own anti-inflammatory properties. Mid-morning, I might have a small handful of almonds or walnuts if I'm feeling hungry. Lunch is often a large salad with leafy greens, colorful vegetables, olives, a sprinkle of feta, and a protein source like sardines or chickpeas. I dress it simply with extra virgin olive oil, lemon juice, and herbs. For an afternoon snack, I'll have hummus with carrot and cucumber sticks, or a piece of fruit with a few nuts. Dinner varies, but a typical meal might be grilled fish with a medley of roasted vegetables, drizzled with olive oil and herbs. Or a bean and vegetable soup, with a small piece of whole grain bread dipped in olive oil. Or a traditional Greek dish like fasolakkia, green beans slowly simmered with tomatoes, onions, and plenty of olive oil. I finish my day with a cup of chamomile tea, sometimes with a small square of dark chocolate if I'm craving something sweet. Notice there's no deprivation here. The meals are satisfying, flavorful, and varied. I'm not hungry, and I don't feel like I'm on a diet in the restrictive sense. I'm simply eating the way humans have eaten for centuries, in one of the healthiest regions of the world. While food was the foundation of my arthritis reversal journey, it wasn't the only factor. The Mediterranean lifestyle encompasses more than just diet, and I incorporated several other elements that I believe contributed to my improvement. Movement is key. In traditional Mediterranean communities, people don't exercise. They simply move throughout the day. I started with very gentle walking, just 10 minutes at first. As my pain decreased, I gradually increased to 30-minute walks daily. I also incorporated gentle stretching each morning, focusing on range of motion for my affected joints. Stress reduction became a priority. Chronic stress triggers inflammation, undoing the good work of an anti-inflammatory diet. I started a simple meditation practice, just 10 minutes each morning of focused breathing. I also returned to an old hobby, knitting, which I find meditative and, ironically, good therapy for my arthritic hands. Sleep quality improved naturally as my pain decreased, but I also made it a priority to establish a consistent sleep schedule. I'm in bed by 10 p.m. and up at 6 a.m., giving my body time to repair itself overnight. Social connection is another aspect of Mediterranean lifestyle that's often overlooked. In Greece, meals are communal affairs, and social isolation is rare. I started hosting small family dinners twice a week, sharing my new recipes and knowledge. The emotional support and reduced loneliness have been as healing as the food itself. Sunlight exposure for vitamin D production is important for joint health. I make sure to spend at least 15-20 minutes in the sunshine each day, usually during my morning walk. For those in less sunny climates, a vitamin D supplement might be necessary, but check with your doctor first. These lifestyle elements work synergistically with the diet. One supports the other in a virtuous cycle of improvement. So, what happened after 6 months of eating and living the Mediterranean way? The physical changes were remarkable. Morning stiffness, which used to last 15-20 minutes, now resolves in under 2 minutes. The constant ache in my knees that made climbing stairs an ordeal has diminished by about 80%. My grip strength has improved to the point where I can open jars and bottles without assistance. My inflammatory markers, measured through blood tests, showed significant improvement. My C-reactive protein levels, a marker of inflammation, decreased by 65%. My doctor was stunned and asked what medications I was taking. When I told him olive oil and sardines, he actually laughed, until I showed him my food journal and the research I'd collected. I've reduced my pain medication by 75%. I still keep it on hand for flare-ups, but those are increasingly rare. My energy levels have soared. I'm no longer dragging myself through the day, counting the hours until I can go back to bed. I'm engaged, active, and present in my life again. Sleep quality has improved dramatically. I fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake feeling rested rather than stiff and sore. My mood has lifted. Chronic pain takes a tremendous toll on mental health, something that's not discussed enough. As my pain decreased, my outlook brightened. I'm more optimistic, more patient, and more able to experience joy. Weight loss wasn't my primary goal, but I've shed 18 pounds without trying. This has further reduced the stress on my weight-bearing joints. But the most meaningful change. Last month, my grandson asked if we could go to the playground. Instead of making an excuse about my knees, I said yes. I pushed him on the swing, helped him across the monkey bars, and even went down the slide with him. The look on his face was worth every garlic clove I've peeled, every fish I've grilled, every olive I've pitted. That's the real measure of success for me. Not blood tests or pain scales, but living fully with the people I love. Now, I want to be completely honest with you. This journey hasn't been all olive oil and roses. There have been challenges, setbacks, and adaptations along the way. The biggest challenge was eating out. American restaurants, even those claiming to be Mediterranean, often use inflammatory ingredients like seed oils, excess salt, and hidden sugars. I've learned to ask specific questions about preparation methods and to request modifications. Sometimes this means I'm that customer, but my health is worth it. Travel presented another challenge. I visited my sister in the Midwest, where fresh fish and quality olive oil were harder to find. I packed some essentials in my suitcase and focused on the Mediterranean principles I could maintain: abundant vegetables, minimal processing, and portion control. Cost was a concern initially. Quality olive oil and fresh fish aren't cheap. But I realized I was saving money by not buying processed foods, eating out less, and reducing my medication. It balanced out financially, and the health benefits far outweighed the cost adjustments. Socializing sometimes felt awkward at first. Friends would invite me for dinner and worry about what to serve me. I started bringing Mediterranean dishes to share, which not only solved the problem but introduced others to this way of eating. Now, several friends have adopted elements of the diet themselves after seeing my results. Family resistance was unexpected. My husband of 45 years was skeptical about changing our eating habits so dramatically. He missed his hamburgers and fries. We compromised by having his and hers meals occasionally, but as he saw my health improve, he gradually came around. Now he's my biggest supporter and has experienced his own health improvements as a bonus. Weather affected my ability to stay active. During a particularly cold and rainy month, my joints stiffened up despite my dietary changes. I found indoor alternatives like mall walking and gentle yoga videos designed for seniors with arthritis. Plateau periods occurred when my improvement seemed to stall. During month 4, I felt discouraged when I didn't notice continued gains. But by making small adjustments, increasing my omega-3 intake, and adding more anti-inflammatory spices, I was able to push through to new improvements. The key to overcoming these challenges was flexibility without compromise. I adapted how I implemented the principles without abandoning them altogether. 6 months ago, I was a woman in her 60s resigned to a future of increasing pain, decreasing mobility, and growing dependence. Today, I'm proof that arthritis symptoms can be dramatically improved through dietary and lifestyle changes, inspired by traditional Mediterranean wisdom. I'm not claiming this approach will work for everyone, or that it's a replacement for medical care. I still see my doctor regularly and follow his advice. But I've discovered that food truly can be medicine, just as my grandmother always claimed. If you're struggling with joint pain and inflammation, consider giving the Mediterranean approach a serious try. Start slowly if you need to, perhaps just replacing your cooking oil with extra virgin olive oil and adding a serving of fatty fish each week. Small changes add up over time. Document your journey. Keep a food journal noting what you eat and how your joints feel. Look for patterns and connections. Be your own health detective. Be patient with yourself. It took 6 months for me to see dramatic improvement, and I had setbacks along the way. Your body needs time to heal from years of inflammatory processes. Connect with others on similar journeys. There's strength in community, and shared wisdom can help you navigate challenges. Remember that you're not just changing your diet, you're reclaiming your life. Every vegetable chopped, every fish grilled, every olive oil-dressed salad is an investment in your future mobility and independence. I started this journey hoping merely to reduce my pain. I ended up transforming my health and rediscovering joys I thought were lost to me forever, like playing with my grandchildren, gardening on weekend mornings, and walking along the beach at sunset with my husband. If you've connected with my story today, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your own experiences with arthritis, ask questions about the Mediterranean approach, or just say hello. I read and respond to every comment. And if you found this information helpful, please consider subscribing to our Mediterranean 60+ channel. Each week, I share recipes, research updates, and practical tips for using food as medicine, especially for those of us in our golden years dealing with inflammatory conditions. Until next time, this is Maria reminding you that it's never too late to reclaim your health, one Mediterranean meal at a time. Yassas, that's cheers in Greek to your health.